Hi everyone, so welcome to Investing for Value. So if you haven't heard, Fed just cut rates by half a percentage point. So was this a good thing? Was it not? Well, I think we'll find out in time. As Powell put it, economy is strong, but there was a bit of risk, so they had to do something. And perhaps it was a wise idea, but I kind of feel like it was a bit too much. Like maybe you can do a quarter of a percent, but why would you do half a percent? Especially when companies have done really well last year. Indexes were at record highs, so all of a sudden, in the first few months of the year, you decide to offer a half percentage cut because there's a fear, but companies aren't really in trouble yet. Like if companies were getting into trouble, then you could probably do like half a percent, but I think they should have probably just followed Australia and did a quarter of a percent because companies don't really need the help right now. And if you start giving them this much help, well, they're just going to be paying, they'll just be borrowing more money, and mostly just paying it out through the dividends because, of course, like net profits probably are going to be affected. So they're going to just borrow money and then they're just going to funnel it out the other end and give it to shareholders through the high dividends that they've been trying to keep. Because if you've noticed one thing, like dividend stocks that have fallen a lot, like I just recently did a video on Ford, who's basically paying an 8.6% dividend um, on the share price. So I think the share price rose a little bit, so it might not be as high anymore right now. But you can guarantee Ford's not going to be cutting the dividends because they don't have to now. Like maybe they didn't have to previously, but with this rate cut, it gives them even more ammo to not have to do it because all of a sudden they don't have to. They've got a bigger cushion to move on. And but I think this is a little bit short-sighted because you're cutting the rate too early. You're going to let companies abuse it, and then later on, if this virus continues to be plaguing the whole situation, like if the economy is going to be plagued by this virus for more than like 6 months, then the Reserve Bank needs a lot of ammo, particularly when companies are not going to be doing like in 6 months if things aren't really slowing down, and the economy is really bad, then they really, really have to cut rates in a big, big way. And by giving a half percentage point away so early, there's not a lot of ammo you can start using later on. And as it's put here, the move was the first first rate cut of its kind like this, which was unscheduled since December 2008. And might I remind you, this was the financial crisis when there was a recession. So all of a sudden, this is like a reminiscence of those days when there's basically a recession that like kind of signals that there might be a recession on its way. The Fed got a bit fearful, so they kind of just gave away half a percentage cut, which is a bit too much. Like, and like the current situation, you can't keep markets up. Markets have been valued on like a premium, so markets had to come down. Whereas you have Trump pressuring the Fed because he doesn't want markets to come down. And markets have been at record highs and everything's been selling at premiums. Like I've looked at so many different companies and like even if you look at like a investor like Warren Buffett, he's hoarding $128 billion because he doesn't see a lot of value in the market. And that kind of tells you the full story because if there's not a lot of value in the market, it means it's overvalued. And if things drop, that's just normal because they weren't worth that much. While you have Trump kind of going, oh, we need to push the market back to those record levels, we're going to act in a way that in a big way just to push markets back up. While you should be doing this without considering what the stock market does entirely, you should be considering the real effects of the economy, like Of course, a lot of production has been halted, but a lot of these companies would have had enough cash to keep themselves going for quite a while. But now you've just given them, a good reason to not need to like tighten the belt. But whereas if you actually made companies consider, tough situations and they had to tighten the belt a little bit, at least they might have looked at reducing dividends. Particularly now that like net profits are down. No point trying to sustain a good, really good payout of dividends when you don't have to. So by giving, these companies these really good rate cuts, you're basically just telling them to borrow more money, like kind of like what the Fed has been doing for the last decade, really. Like markets have been propped up because a lot of companies have borrowed a lot of money to do buybacks of their own shares, which doesn't really increase the productivity of the company or add to GDP. It only increases the price of the share, and only makes the shareholder richer. It's not really a productive way of functioning. And by giving 0.5%, I think it's a very similar story. It's not really a productive way of helping companies function because currently a lot of things are halted. Like they're not getting shipments from China, so they can't really do a lot of activities. Um, and at the end of the day, like that's the idea of cutting rates. You're trying to stimulate the market with more debt in a sense. But right now, with halted productions and all that, the companies can't really like stimulate anything. The only thing they're going to try to do is keep shareholders happy. So like, as much as I think this should have been like a 0.25% of rate cut, but the fact that it's 0.5%, we can see if it was the right choice a few months down the track or further down than that. But yeah, like let me know what your thoughts are. Like, was this rate cut, too big, too fast, or was it, the right move? Because there's so much things that could happen in a short frame of time. I think a lot of people are scared, but I think at the same time you're not necessarily dealing with a financial problem. Like you're dealing with a health problem that's plaguing the country, and there's a lot of fear. But you're not quite dealing with the financial problem right now. Companies can still kind of handle themselves. While if you give them a rate cut, it would like it might profit the market because people kind of feel like there's a bit of relief. Um, but in the long run, I don't think the market's sustainable at its current levels. Especially with companies projected to do worse with all their downgrades. I expect the market to just kind of just dip down a bit more, and I don't think like a rate cut's going to do that much more. It's just going to keep the excess kind of going until it can't keep going. And that's not the that's it doesn't motivate. It doesn't seem like it's going to be motivating the right things. But of course we can see how things go. But that's just from a company perspective. Like they could be looking at the individual perspective of people who have mortgages. If say like things don't go well with companies, people get fired, then maybe they have to look at the situation that they don't want to put such a burden in terms of mortgages and savings. Um, so yeah, like there's multiple factors and multiple aspects to consider, but like just considering from a stock market point of view, from a company point of view, then I don't think it's the right move for the companies. Perhaps it's a good move for the people because maybe like you'll have companies firing people, but we haven't gotten to that stage quite yet. Of course, there is a lot of situations where, companies can't utilize their full workforce, so they're actually just telling half the workforce to go on holiday, and if they're not, and if some of them aren't getting paid, then perhaps they do need a lower interest rate to make their payment, like to reduce their interest bill, so that they don't have to spend as much money. and they end up with a bit more money to spend on other things, which can kind of help stimulate the economy a little bit. But in the scheme of things, it kind of feels like it's kind of one of those things that are just too quick. They could have done a quarter of a percent, looked at how things are going, and then did another quarter percent. Well, if you do half a percent, it might help things, but it might not. So like here, like Dow drops 600 points even after Fed slashes rates. So in a sense, like that half percent rate cut kind of just made things like seem like really dire, because all of a sudden the Fed's basically telling people things aren't looking good, and you know it's the right time to be fearful. So that's the kind of thing as well. Like people interpret it in a bad way as well. So it can potentially have a that psychological effect on a lot of investors where they're like, oh, even the Fed kind of says we're not doing well, so we want to sell and we want to take our money and run. You know, we don't want to keep investing in the stock market, particularly where things aren't going well. So, you know, 6%, 600 point drop, even after with rates. You know, like the market's kind of started up, you know, quite positive in a sense. But now that you have a rate cut, and in the market's even further down, perhaps, yeah, like it was too much. Like if you just did it slowly, then it didn't cause panic. But now that you've done it quite quick, like did it potentially cause a bit of panic in the market because you're just showing that, hey, like I mean they even say the economy is strong, but because of a bit of risk, they don't want to risk things out. It is right. And then also you're looking at this whole situation and going, you've got Korea, Iran, and Italy that are basically going to be spreading this virus quite, in a sense, quite viral, because Iran's definitely not controlled their one quite well, and the cases have just gone way beyond anyone else's that had it earlier than them. So now they're at 2,336, and then you have Italy, who looked like they might have been controlling it, but still, the cases are like going quite high, quite a couple of hundred every day at least, and it's just recently passed the 2,000 case. The fear is that France and Germany start growing more rapidly, and also Spain, then that's basically Europe kind of really badly infected and things have to be shut down. While in Asia, apart from like South Korea, it seems like a good part of it was under control. And for the US, US seems to be, just uh, figuring out the situation. And that's the thing, like the US has only got 106 cases, yet you're showing there's a lot of fear and you're already doing a lot of like 0.5% cuts. So that's kind of the thing. It could just be like you're taking a drastic move for a situation that's still too early to decide what the impact is. If you don't know the full impact yet, then it probably isn't that wise to make too many moves right now. It's better just giving a bit more a few concessions and seeing how it goes. But we can see how it goes. About 600 point drop after the Fed slashes rates. It doesn't really bode well, does it? But I guess that's how things go. Like, but I do see markets just dropping over time. It just seems inevitable. And I did talk about the VIX in a prior video, how you can use the VIX to basically hedge your position, or if you don't see the market doing well, you can buy the VIX, and when the market goes down, you actually make a gain. So it can be one of those products that might be wise in such a scenario, but you can, you can kind of sit down, think about your situation, what you should do, And you know, don't be too hasty about things. Just carefully consider. But I don't think cutting rates really did much for the stock market because currently it's not really going to stimulate anything. It's just going to add more to companies being able to just pay people more, pay dividends more, or keep up the really high dividends currently with some of these stocks. And 3 to 6 months down the track, you're just going to run out of ammo, and you know that potentially also contributes to a big recessionary crash because when the Fed runs out of mechanisms to help the market, it can't really do that much. It basically leaves market on their own at that stage. But you know, that's just my thinking. Maybe you're thinking quite different. But yeah, certainly let me know what your thoughts are, or if you just have some companies you want me to look at, yeah, certainly let me know. Until then, well, be cautious, you know, try to hold a bit of cash, and good luck.